everyone. Welcome. My name is Julianne Meyer, and I am the host of Own Your Wellness. And I'm excited to be here today. If you were here on Monday, you noticed that I had something in my eye almost the entire show, blinking, and it's so much pain. Good news, it's out. There's no damage. I'm good to go. I won't be so distracted today, which is fabulous news because I have a special guest. Her name is Sam Houghton. And I am excited to have her here because she loves to talk about and knows, most importantly, knows about one of my favorite topics, which is plant-based eating. So let's bring her on. Hello, welcome.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you here. It was one of those times I was like, is this going to happen? I need to have her on my show. But we worked it out.
Hey, it's happening. Here we are.
Exactly. So I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself and your own wellness journey.
Well, I have been plant-based for 12 years. I actually recently wrote an article about that got picked up by Green Queen Media, which was a lot of fun. And mine really started kind of obliquely in high school when I decided to become a vegetarian. Unfortunately, I decided to become a vegetarian because everyone knows vegetarians are thinner. I like to tell people this is a very silly reason to make any kind of diet change decision. First of all, because I didn't need to lose weight. And second of all, it's just a very unhealthy mindset to go into a diet decision with. But it all worked out for the good. What happened is I started really wanting to be vegan, but 12 years ago, there wasn't a lot of information on how to do it. And there weren't a lot of transition products. I like to tell people we basically had Light Life and Yes, and that plastic cheese that the package probably tasted better than the cheese. So I went vegetarian for a while. And then I had to really come to terms with the fact that I'm massively lactose intolerant. I had to give up dairy. So I thought, all right, if I go full on vegan, don't have to worry about that. You know, things unfolded, years go by. I learned different things. I actually went even through a bout of having disordered eating. Mm-hmm. And when I came out of that, it was around the same time that I went full on, like really gave up the very last vestiges of non-vegan food and went full on vegan. Saw forks over knives a few years later and started leaning toward the whole food plant-based side of things. I got so interested in that. I started learning about, even though I had started with the health aspect, I started learning about factory farming and the environmental aspects. And I delved in to learn more about the health. I took the plant-based nutrition certificate course from the Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies. That was just a few weeks long, fascinated me so much that I actually went in and took health coach training from Bauman College. I wish there had been 100% plant-based health coach training at the time, but that was kind of whole foods, as close as I could get. And I learned so much. It was just absolutely fascinating. And since then, I read the books, I watch the movies, and I get into plant-based podcasts. I co-moderate a whole food plant-based club room on Clubhouse every Tuesday evening.
Oh, perfect.
So that's really what I delved into. And the interesting thing is I did do some health coaching for a while, but it can be kind of a hard sell in my area of the country. So I was writing content to pay my bills. And then at the beginning of oddly enough, like a month before the whole pandemic made the world explode, I merged the two and I started actually doing content strategy and content writing for brands that are in the plant-based space, and have recently started honing in on the CPG, DTC, the packaged goods, the direct-to-consumer brands that are doing plant-based and functional and better for you. Because there's so much going on in the plant-based space right now. It's like literally every day somebody's getting funded, somebody's launching a new product, and I'm just really excited to not only still be experimenting with plant-based food, but see this unfolding as a growing industry.
That's amazing. I got to tell you, I grew up in a vegetarian household and vegan. It was mostly vegan, but you can't call yourself vegan if you aren't. But, we had things like bacon bacon growing up. I don't even think they make that. I don't know if they make that anymore.
I think it's still hiding. I think it is.
My goodness. I mean, that has got to be a good 35 years ago. So at least 35 years ago that I, started eating that stuff. And that's not necessarily the healthiest choice in the world. However, things have come a long way since then. So for somebody who is starting out or considering maybe if this is a choice that they want to make, what kind of research would you recommend them to do?
I would first and foremost check out people who are actually giving a balanced opinion on this. Now, this is coming from somebody who's been all over the spectrum, and I recently did a little bit of a dive into nutrition Twitter. You do not want to go there to get your nutrition information. There are some people that are really doing a good job. The first person who really comes to mind who's very balanced on this is Jenny Messina. She's the vegan RD. She has some very good balanced recommendations on this. I'm also a fan of Joel Kahn. He can be a little bit almost adamant, but he's very, he's got some good information about supplements in this. But definitely don't believe that you don't need supplements. Do your research, because anybody on any diet can be deficient. B12 is an absolute must if you're on a plant-based diet, and most people are deficient in vitamin D. So that's going to be your first two places to be looking. Like, even get yourself tested, I always say. And the other kind of research I would do is make sure that there is nothing in your health history or even that runs in your family that might make it difficult for you to absorb nutrients optimally. This can happen. I was actually taking B12. The form I was taking, I was not absorbing. I was supplementing with B12 and was showing symptoms of B12 deficiency. So that would be the other thing, is know your health history, know anything that might require you to take particular care. The other thing would be definitely look into how much protein you actually need. There's a lot of argument on this, but the truth is it's different for everybody. Absorption issues, if you're highly active, like I'm super active, and the RDA for protein will not do it for me. That would be something like 46 some odd grams of protein. Now, I'm super active. I eat over 2,800 calories a day. That would be like 9% protein. It just wouldn't float. So depending on your situation, do a little research on what you need protein wise, as well as your other macros, but protein's always the one everybody thinks about. And I always like to recommend, just do some watching. Find out what the newer documentaries are, see some of the older ones, and stay up on the research, because things do change. There are certain things that used to be, gold standard, or we knew about plant-based eating, that have since, we found out new things. We're finding more things out about like the microbiome and how different things work in the body. So keep up on the research, and, just keep exploring. There are so many people that you can read and listen to, and just be discerning.
No, that's really good advice. And I love that too, about picking people that kind of are objective as opposed to all the way down the rabbit hole, which there's nothing wrong with that. But if you really want to if you're in that decision mode, then it's kind of, you want objective, just like, okay, will this work for me? And you touched on the whole protein thing. And that is always, because I have been a nutrition coach for I don't even know how long. And that seems to be the number one concern with every single client that I have, especially if they happen to be plant-based. And you mentioned, like, find out what is the right for you, the right quantity for you. Like for me, I can't eat that much because I get protein angry. That's what I call it. It's protein angry because I get pissed off. But that's if I'm eating animal protein. So there are other protein options out there. What could you name a few, please?
Do you want the whole food, the prepared kind, or both?
Both. Okay.
Well, your best whole food options are going to be things like beans and lentils, which is going to be just any kind of beans you can think of: red, black, kidney beans, white beans, chickpeas. And then you have all kinds of lentils. There are red lentils, yellow lentils, black lentils, brown lentils, green lentils. There's a bunch of different kinds of split peas that you can try. Also, a lot of nuts and seeds have good proteins. Almonds come to mind. Those are good protein. Almonds are good for protein. Hemp seeds are also extremely good for protein. And, you can even get these at places like Walmart now. Like I can buy Manitoba Harvest hemp seeds in like gigantic sacks at Walmart. So it's not like it's this weird exotic thing anymore. You have to go someplace special. What else is really good for the protein? Oh, peanuts, of course. So peanut butter is super, super easy to find, super cheap.
But you're not talking about Jiffy.
No, I'm talking about, believe it or not, one of the least expensive, most accessible peanut butters that's just like peanuts is Trader Joe's. They have a really good, regular, old, creamy, unsalted peanut butter. It's like $2, and It's delicious. It's great for baking too, because it's a little more runny. So it's not, it doesn't make, like if you wanted to make like a healthier cookie, or if you wanted to make like a bar or something where you don't want like this really hard peanut butter, the Trader Joe's is amazing. They also make a organic one with Valencia peanuts, a little bit sweet. It's very good. And if you are somebody who is more into like the protein shakes, maybe you're on the go, or you go to the gym and you like to have something after your workout, I really like pea protein. It can be kind of salty, so you have to watch out for that. There are some companies that are just peas and nothing else. I always recommend, if you're going to be doing a protein powder, look for something like a pea protein. Manitoba Harvest makes a hemp protein, and Sun Warrior also makes a blend called Warrior Blend that's just, I think it's called unflavored. There's nothing in it but like the proteins and I think like some MCTs. So those are some other places that you can get it. And if you don't mind eating some of the prepared products that are out there, there are things that range from stuff that's just like meat, like Beyond and Impossible, to, like the OG, like tofu and seitan and tempeh. And actually, tofu and tempeh, they're pretty close to being like a whole food, because they're just tempeh is fermented and tofu is minimally processed. Seitan is a little more processed because it's the deep protein part of wheat, but still, if you're pairing this with largely other whole foods like fruits and vegetables and whole grains and things, it all works out.
No, thank you for that, because a lot of people do struggle. And then, there's also vegetables that are high in protein, like broccoli and spinach. So, those are things to think about too. Like, it's in so much, whether we think about it or not.
Fruits too. I found out that like cantaloupes and like stone fruits, like peaches and plums and stuff, they have an insane amount of protein for fruit. I happen to track my meals because I'm highly active. And this summer, when I would put stuff in my program, I would be like, how did my protein jump so much? And it was oddly, it was the fruit. And that's another thing to think about. Seasonally, that's going to change. There's not as much protein in apples and pears as there is in some of the summer fruits. So you might have to adjust if you're somebody who is highly active, or you have some kind of medical condition where you need to know how much of your macronutrients you're getting.
Have you had the chance to watch Game Changers?
Oh, I got to see it when it was this was obviously the pandemic, when it was in my local theater, like a one night only showing. I actually went and saw it, which is unusual for me. I don't sit well, so I wasn't like enthusiastic about going and sitting through movies, but man, it was great to go see.
For those of you who are watching, Game Changers was an amazing documentary about athletes who eat plant-based, and just, it was mind-blowing to see. And I've been plant-based almost my whole life. Don't get me wrong, it's never been perfect. I've always decided to try and eat meat or fish here and there, just to try it out. But I will say that I was impressed with what people could do on this plant-based diet. And it was like, wait, what?
Yeah. I like to tell people, I'll go back to, I touched on, I have a disordered eating background. About a little over 10 years ago, I was both anorexic and bulimic. I would go back and forth. I'm 5'6". I weighed 90 pounds by the time that was all over.
Oh my gosh.
Literally, I had to fold things up and put them on chairs when I sat down. Bottom of my feet hurt when I walked. Grace of God, literally, that I didn't go further and wind up in the hospital. That was also part of my healing, was going plant-based. I have since put on 27.5 pounds, and a lot of it is muscle, because very shortly after that, I started lifting. I don't go to the gym and power lift, but I do lifting at home. And, I've been working with a sports PT to get stronger and fix imbalances and those sorts of things. And it's possible. So, I think the stigma of skinny, unhealthy vegans is really going away. But because you have people like, Robert Cheek and a lot of the people who are in Game Changers, people like Jeff Palmer, who really show that this is possible. But if anyone is wondering, or maybe, you're on a place in your journey where you want to put on some weight and you want to bulk up a little bit, it's totally possible in a plant-based diet, and it's way better for you than traditional bulking.
It is way better. And, the thing with animal proteins as well that nobody seems to talk about is once you cook it, you kill a lot of the protein. So unless you're into eating raw meat, you're not getting as much protein as you think you are.
The other thing too with animal proteins, especially, and this is really the big, I'll say the big beef, because it's an appropriate pun, that people in the plant-based space, especially the ethical vegan space, have, is the way we produce our meat. And I have an issue with this, because I'm a committed practicing Christian, and I have an issue with this because if you look back in the Bible, when God created everything in the creation narrative in Genesis, he creates animals and he creates this garden and he creates all these things. He says, this is good. And he puts man over it to steward it. And I tell people, if somebody tells you to steward something, like if your friend tells you, here, steward my house while I'm not here, you don't go around the house and dump all your trash out and overflow the toilets and this and that. And then never clean up after yourself. But that's exactly what we're doing with factory farming. We're cramming hundreds of, I found some of the statistics about this recently, and it was like, to be a factory farm, it's something like at least 100,000 chickens in one space. Can you picture 100,000 chickens? So we're cramming these animals into these tiny little spaces. They're not able to live as they're created to live. They're sick. They're walking around and, I won't do all the details just in case people are eating while they're watching, but they're sick, it's dirty. They're fed things that you don't want to know about. They're treated in ways that would, if you did it to your dog, you'd wind up in jail. But there's all these, loopholes in the law so people can get past it. For what? So we can go to McDonald's and buy $1 hamburger. It's just, and the fact that it's all raised that way, all these animals are raised that way. The meat is actually, the nutrition is completely different. It's pro-inflammatory, and a lot of it's really dirty. Again, won't be going into details, but I do believe I remember reading somewhere an analogy that the chicken you buy in the store is actually dirtier than the inside of your toilet. So that's something to think about with factory farming and animal protein. There's a lot going on. So even if you choose to eat meat, you have to be really, really careful about where it's coming from, because you're probably not just getting meat.
That's a brilliant point, because I've never been one to force my beliefs on other people, but I will educate them on, how I live. And if they're interested, great. But here's the thing that I will always just, if I'm going to force anything, it is, you are what you eat and you are what you eat eats. So my thing is like, if you wouldn't eat roadkill, why would you eat something that has been treated worse than that? The fear that's in that, because you eat the energy of the food too. So you got to think about, and then we wonder why, kids are developing, at such young ages. It's from all ages. It's from all of the, the hormones and everything else and all the antibiotics that they pump into these animals. You wonder why, your antibiotics don't work for you anymore. It's because you're eating antibiotics on a daily basis. Yeah. It's disturbing.
I can't remember if it's 70 or 80% of all the antibiotics in this country go to animal ag. Yeah. I mean, it's not because doctors are over prescribing. It's because because we're over consuming in our food. And that's also how we wind up with things like the romaine lettuce contamination. Romaine lettuce does not romaine lettuce doesn't digest and it doesn't eliminate. The only place you can get those kinds of diseases is from feces, and it's from things that leak. It's from stuff they spray on the fields. I mean, this is disgusting. I mean, even when you eat plant-based, you have to think where did this come from? What was put on it? So, I mean, I don't tell people this to make them paranoid, because, I mean, I used to have food fear, and I don't want anybody to be paranoid. And a lot of the times when you start attaching things like, well, this could be contaminated, people freak out and they don't want to touch anything. But my thing is always just be discerning.
Yes.
Be really discerning about where your food comes from.
I'm really glad that you brought that up too, because how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? Because you can find something wrong with everything that you eat. I mean, it even comes down to the point where, should kale be cooked or only sort of cooked or not cooked at all?
Exactly.
And it's like, whoa, chill out. Food should not be your number one and only thought throughout the entire day. So,
yeah. Although I do like to encourage people, if you are having issues with that, if you're having, I actually was able to touch on this in the Clubhouse room recently. If you're having issues with that, if you find yourself afraid when you're choosing food, if you find yourself, literally paralyzed, or you are just thinking about food all day, get in touch with someone. There's the National Eating Disorders Association. They have a helpline, they have a hotline, and that's super important no matter what you eat, because your mental health is, as we've been seeing more and more over the last, year and a half, 2 years, this is really something that is part and parcel of your entire health. It's not just what you eat. It's also your relationship with what you eat that's important. Because if you sit down and I've seen this, unfortunately, in the plant-based space. There are people who are like, they've gone too far down the rabbit hole and they are terrified. And you can see it in them when they're walking around. A lot of them, unfortunately, are unhealthily thin.
Yes.
And you can almost see it in their faces. They're just like scared. And then they ask these questions of, people in the plant-based space, well, what about this? And do I have to be careful about this? And it gets off the wall. So
it really does.
Going back to where I am in working in the plant-based space, it can be such a different atmosphere there because people are so excited about what's going on. So that's what I'd rather see with people. It's like, I can't remember who said, my friend Sid Notter. She's literally written the book on being Christian and plant-based. So we really hit it off. She likes to say, don't tell yourself I can't eat blah, blah, blah. Tell yourself I get to eat XYZ. I get to eat this amazing food that also tastes good and also is healthy. So that's a great way to frame it.
It is. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that too, because and I love to tell this story, but when I moved to Italy, all of a sudden, all my favorite foods were not available. And it took me a good, I don't even know, probably 5 months before it dawned on me suddenly, hello, you're missing Italy while you're here. You're so upset about the food not being the same instead of going out and finding your new favorites. Like you have this huge opportunity to explore new food and try new things. And, you're wasting it. You're wasting it because you're so concerned that they don't have this or they don't have that.
That's the essence of plant-based eating, though. Whether you want to just start dipping your toes in the water and, you're not really sure you want to go full on, or whether you're ready, like one of the health coaching clients I had when I was health coaching, she started with her baby steps and like a week later, she had delved into all the movies and stuff. She's like, I'm going full on. So whether it's your baby steps or you're going full in, it's such a journey. I mean, I've been doing this for 12 years and it's still a journey. It's still just an exploratory way of being able to try new foods, especially if you have something like a farmer's market nearby. It is great to just go and be like, what's this? I have no idea, but I'm going to buy it and research it on the internet and make something with it. That's how I discovered things like kohlrabi. It's how I discovered just so many different things, different varieties of squashes and grains and stuff that I had never tried before.
Exactly.
Just, being willing to step out of, I grew up meat and potatoes family, and we literally had this on this night, this on this night, this on this night. And there's nothing wrong with having a plan. That's really great. But also being ready and willing to get kind of crazy and experiment with things maybe you can't even pronounce the name of, but it's a plan.
I like that. And that's funny too, because my stepmom, well, first of all, she is an animal rights activist. And also that's part of the reason why we didn't eat meat or anything like that. But we ended up having, this on this night, this on this night. And they still, to this day, I'm 43 years old. They still, to this day, have the same night for the same food. And every once in a while, they'll try different things. Or, it's not like they're not willing to try different stuff. But, they're a good, I don't know, probably 35 years into this thing and they're still experimenting. So it's okay to, have your schedule and it's okay to experiment. Like you said, I love that.
Yeah. And I highly recommend, if you can afford it and you have it nearby, try a community supported agriculture CSA box at least 1 year. I've been doing it 3 years running, and that gives you an excuse to experiment because you get what's abundant on the farm. So you'll get some things that are predictable based on the seasons. You'll get your corn and tomatoes and stuff, but sometimes you'll open up your box and you'll get something completely unexpected. Like I'll get, like, a couple times a year, I'll get okra, and I make this amazing dish from Isa Chandra Moscow. It's called bindi masala with okra and black eyed peas. Make that every year with the okra, and I had never had the okra. It's amazing stuff. And you get like tomatillos. You get, depending on where you are and what's in season, and that also teaches you to understand how the seasons work. One other thing I really like to do, and I don't recommend just going out and doing this until you do some serious research and have been in the plant-based thing for a while, but I like to forage the things that I can recognize. I live in a neighborhood where garlic mustard grows everywhere, and nobody cares that I pull it up and eat it because it's an invasive weed. But it's a delicious invasive weed. I have a friend who knows where to get the nettles. I don't know if you know this, but you can actually eat stinging nettles. If anybody has not tried that, If you eat, there's also
You can make tea out of it too.
What now?
You can make tea out of the nettles.
That's true. I've had nettle tea as well, but some of these things, these are maybe a little further in your journey, but it's just fantastic. I mean, I even know some people who know how to properly forage mushrooms, which you should never ever do unless you know what you're doing. Exactly. But when you know somebody who knows how to do it, those are going to be the best mushrooms like you ever had. I managed to score some chanterelles from a local vendor this year. I just looked straight at her. I was like, "Are those what I think they are?" And it was just, it was magical. So yeah, get crazy and experiment.
I love that. I love that idea too of just trying things out, because how else are you going to learn? And I don't know. It's just it's a growing experience. But the thing I also want to say too is you don't have to keep trying the same things over and over again that you hate. If you don't, for me, I always talk about kale because I'm not a huge fan. I eat it every once in a while when it's in a meal that is just absolutely delicious, but I can't figure out how to make it in a way that I like it. So restaurants only for me. But I'm just saying is like, even if you decide to go plant-based, you don't have to all of a sudden eat all these things you hate. There's so many things out there if you're willing to experiment, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And, I'm glad you brought that up because I can't remember if it's actually live on my website right now, but if it's not, I'm going to bring it back. I wrote an article once called "It's Okay to Hate Healthy Food." Basically, the premise was, just because this is a superfood or this is really good for you, you don't have to eat just that, because there are so many other things that are good for you. If you don't like kale, there's Swiss chard and mustard greens and napa cabbage and what's that one? Broccoli rabe and bok choy and spinach. There's just so many. There's more are going to come to me because I like so many different ones, but those are the ones that come to mind. Oh, dandelion greens too. That's another one if you like your bitters. Just so many things that you can try. Collards. And that's just one. That's just greens. So if you don't like blueberries, well, there's raspberries and there's, strawberries and all these other things. And then you said there's so many things. Also so many things out there for people who want to transition. And this is where I get to nerd out with what I do with the Modern Health Nerd, which is my business. I get to see the products that are coming to market. Now, even like 2 years ago, right? You would walk into maybe a specialty store, a health food store. And, there's a local co-op where I am. And that's where you'd find those things. If they were in the grocery store, they were in like this little slot, right? There was the tofu and then like a couple of other things. I went to Walmart the other day to pick up a few things. They now have Gardein. They have, I think, Impossible Foods. There was Daring Foods chicken pieces. And they're a soy-based, clean label chicken alternative. They have Daiya Foods, like the pizzas and all of this stuff. This is a mainstream. I believe Walmart is like the biggest grocer now. So and so I can also go to places even like a ShopRite, Hannaford's, all these other places. And I know if you're in another part of the country where you have like a Kroger's or a Sprouts or whatever, you've got it made. And obviously we have Whole Foods, which has grown quite a bit. But my point is, you used to have to go to Whole Foods. But now you can go anywhere and try so many things that are coming out. And if the pre-prepared alternatives like that, maybe that's not quite your thing, you can literally find tofu and tempeh just about everywhere. And there are a lot of seitan brands coming out now too. There are smaller ones. There's more established ones like Upton's Naturals. Before you even touch like the multitude of greens and this, that, and the other thing, you can just go walking down the aisles. And even now, like we talked about the plasticky cheese earlier. Plant-based cheese is growing up so much. I mean, you look at what Miyoko Shinner did, and she just kind of transformed the category and is still doing it. But then you have people like Tree Line Nut Cheese, which does like softer cheese and little cheese wheels. You have people like Kite Hill. Now, I'm half Italian, okay? You got to do cheese right for it to pass the test. I had the Kite Hill regatta in a pasta bake that I made a while back. I think it was for Christmas because we're Italian. We do pasta on Christmas. Literally like most authentic that I've had pre-prepared. Wow. And you have now, there's a brand down in New York City. They're called Please, Pleese. They're doing pizza cheese. And they're like taking over restaurants in New York City doing pizza cheese. And it's just changing. It's changing so fast. And you have just so many other brands that are experimenting with everything. It's not just, soy and nuts and stuff anymore. You have grounded foods that's using upcycled cauliflower in their plant-based cheese. And
wow.
you have there's a company called Sophie's Bionutrients that's experimenting with microalgae protein for literally every application. You only have to do just like a little bit of digging. And I like to recommend like Green Queen Media and Food Hack, and I'm sure other ones will come to mind as we're talking, for finding out what's going on. Because there's also Plant-Based News and Vegconomist. That's the other one where you can see what's going on in the industry.
Oh, I like that. I haven't heard of that one.
Much. So, and then you have Elizabeth Alfano's doing great things with the Plant-Based Business Hour. Wow. So I could just keep going. There's just so many things where you can find out what's happening in plant-based and try new products that are coming out too. And it's all starting to lean toward the better for you side also. That's kind of the next trend coming. First, we had the wave of the transition foods, and now we've got this better for you trend coming, which what excites me, because I skew whole food plant-based. You have actual veggies. They're doing veggie burgers that are beans and grains and vegetables, and they're all different colors. Oh my gosh, you should see their Instagram feed. It's just so colorful. You have Cool Beans that's doing whole food plant-based wraps. So they actually have like whole beans and whole grains inside them. They're not just kind of mushy inside. And there's so much going on now. Just so much. Clean label is the next trend.
I love that. On that note, we do need to go to commercial break. So we'll be right back after these messages, okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
For those of you who are watching us live, as always, you're very much appreciated. And as I mentioned, we do need to go to commercial break. So we'll be right back after these messages.
Now, you can vibrationally align your aura. You can gain a larger and spiritual perspective on life, relationships, God, people, wellness, and money. You can also have moments of meditation and reflection any time of the day. And reading the thrilling, adventurous, and mystical story of Shiga will just add more faith to your daily experience of the mystery of the universe.
When drug or alcohol addiction take over, things begin to disappear. Your friends, your family, and eventually, you. Recommended by Dr. Phil, New Method Wellness can help get your life back with individualized treatment plans for dual diagnosis clients. New Method Wellness provides the most highly credentialed treatment in a safe and welcome environment. Call New Method Wellness for your free consultation and ask about our national accreditations. Together, we can put the pieces back together.
Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us now, my name is Julianne Meyer, and I'm the host of Own Your Wellness. And today's guest is Sam Houghton. Let's bring her back on. Hello.
Hello again.
So we were talking off screen a little bit about how your website is changing, but in the meantime, people can still find you and information here, correct? Because you mentioned that blog before.
Yes, you can actually find, if you want to go straight to the blog, it's that, and then you just add news at the end. But actually in my new website, which she'll be dropping soon, very, very soon, really excited about the new design. I'm just so thrilled with the new design. Been working with a great designer. Shout out to Icon Labs. That's EIKON Labs. They're amazing people. And I'm actually going to have like a separate space for my blog and for podcast episodes. Right now, they're all just kind of mixed together. So you'll find all of that at modernhealthnerd.com/news for now, but in the future, you'll be able to find it in 2 separate spots. Same website, own categories. So definitely check that out if you'd like. I have an email sign-up box, but no newsletter right now. So if you want to wait for one, you are totally welcome to sign up.
I love that. And then, you mentioned too about your podcast. So are all the episodes going to be available through modernhealthnerd.com or where else?
You can find all those there. I'm also on Apple. I'm on Spotify, at pretty much all the major podcast platforms. So if you just search Modern Health Nerd Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, it should be there. So if not, check out the website, and all the episodes are there with the show notes in posts.
Oh, I love that. And then also you were talking about Clubhouse. So I want to make sure we mention that one as well for people who really want to connect with you, and hear from you on a little bit more intimate level.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm part of a group of fantastic moderators, along with Tyler Mayoris of Cool Beans, Kathleen Gage, who has a couple of her own podcasts, Angel, who also goes by A Yummy Vegan, and Paige Parsons-Roche. We, on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern, co-moderate our whole food plant-based room. It was Tyler's idea to start the club, and we've been going strong, I think, since like partway through the early parts of the pandemic. So basically, we will have specific topics once in a while. Sometimes we'll have nutrition experts or doctors in, but basically we just get together. We invite everyone up on the stage with us, ask questions, share stories, share tips, and just we really, really have a great time together, just chit-chatting about all things plant-based and whole food plant-based. So if you want to contribute or you have some questions, come and join us.
I love that, because that is needed, and to be able to ask in a friendly way and, not feel intimidated, because not everybody wants to sign up for somebody like a health coach. Not everybody wants to, I just have questions or I want to learn more. So, thank you for doing that. That's actually quite amazing.
Caveat on that, even though all of us are, vegan/plant-based and I have health coaching training, none of us are doctors. So nothing that we give you is medical advice. It's all just advice from our own experiences and the things that we know. And we always encourage you to, especially if you have some health concerns, talk with your doctor.
Absolutely. That's a really, really, really good point. And I'm also going to say something as well. Always check with your doctor, but also have an understanding that they don't have typically education in nutrition. Yeah. So just make sure that it doesn't conflict with what you're doing with your doctor, and make sure that, you don't have any deficiencies and all of that. Yeah. But I wouldn't necessarily take advice about what food to eat, except for, okay, can I still take this while I'm taking this? Or is it that, that sort of thing?
Exactly.
Absolutely, 100%. But just be aware that they don't have as much training as somebody like you.
Well, just never self-diagnose. That's a big problem. A lot of people are just be like, and the other thing, just because you're plant-based does not mean you are invincible. You can still get injuries. Exactly. You can still get sick. You can you will eventually die because you're mortal. It does not make. I always tell people going plant-based does not turn you into a level 12 vegan who can vibrate through walls and defy quantum physics. But it does significantly when you eat on the whole food plant-based spectrum, and again, are discerning about where you source your food from and the balance of eating packaged products versus whole foods. It does significantly reduce your risk for certain diseases and certain other problems. And a lot of people who eat this way also find that they recover better, like from injuries and exercise and stuff. Now, I live, it's kind of heavy for my size, so I'm still the one who, like, 3 days after leg day, I'm still waddling, but so there's no guarantees, but some people have a benefit with that too.
I love that. And so you mentioned a really important benefit, but what are some other benefits that people can see when they switch to plant-based?
Well, I'm going to harp on fiber a little bit here. There's the book Fiber Fueled. That's a big one. A lot of people talk about that now. That we didn't have a book like that when I was first starting out. But as Paige likes to say in our Clubhouse room, there's a fiber deficiency in this country. Now, fiber is super important. There are certain conditions where having more fiber can make you sicker if you have certain digestive conditions. But by and large, most people do not get enough fiber. I think the absolute minimum is in the mid-20s for women and the low 30s for men. Now, most Americans on a standard westernized diet are getting about 15. Maybe it's a little bit more now because people are a little more conscientious, but that's the average. So when you first switch to plant-based, you may notice that your digestive system is a little, I always suggest, drink a lot more water too, because when you're taking in more fiber from plants, you're going to need more water to help it move through, or you'll have other problems. But I'm going to harp on fiber a little bit. Those benefits are just so amazing. We are just learning, like scratching the surface with the microbiome research. We know that there are certain strains that can do certain things for your health. There are strains that produce short chain fatty acids, which are absolutely essential. I wish I had the list in front of me. There are a bunch of things that they do, but the one that's the most well known is they are actually nourishing to the cells in your gut wall. So when you feed your gut bacteria fiber, which is only in plant foods and mostly in whole plant foods, because people have been talking protein powders before, they're protein. They don't have fiber. They're just the pure protein.
Yeah.
But when you feed your gut bacteria with the fiber, they make these short chain fatty acids, most notably butyrate, and it helps to keep your gut wall healthy, which is absolutely essential because your immune system is trained in conjunction with how your gut works. If your gut doesn't work right, your immune system is not going to work right. This is a big problem, especially when you don't have enough fiber and your gut is just not working. You can get gut damage. You can have things winding up in your bloodstream that aren't supposed to be there. You can have digestive problems, and you can have a lot of digestive diseases too. So fiber is just an absolutely huge benefit of a plant-based diet. If you're eating plants, you're going to get fiber. And if you're eating predominantly plants, you're going to get a lot of fiber. And that's okay. I mean, obviously, if you find yourself having some kind of digestive distress, again, go back to talk to your doctor. But generally, by and large, you're going to do better with more.
And that's true. And I'm glad that you talked about, the drinking the more water. And because if you go from 0 to 60, we're talking like, let's talk on a scale of unhealthy to healthy. And that's even still relative. But let's say you eat McDonald's and meat and all of this, and then you go to completely plant-based, your system is gonna be like, what? So
definitely. I had a health coaching client who was actually asking me about her digestion. I was like, how much fiber did you suddenly start eating? And that was the core of it. And so, we got her to back off and transition a little more slowly. And that's why, that's why it's also okay to transition. If you are somebody who wants to go all in, but maybe your digestive system just isn't comfortable with that yet, your microbiome needs some time to change. It can take a couple of weeks. It can take a little longer than that, depending on what's going on with your digestive system. But you asked about other benefits. Definitely more energy. Definitely more energy. If you take your B12, make sure you're taking your B12, because then if you're not doing that, your energy goes bye-bye. But more energy, and also it's more anti-inflammatory. A lot of people talk about this. It's because there's antioxidants in plant-based foods. And this is true even of like some of the plant-based prepared foods. Like if you eat something like a veggie burger that's got veggies in it and beans and things, it's going to have antioxidants. And even like Beyond Meat and Impossible have fiber.
Yeah.
So these are things that are in plants inherently, and you have to really process the heck out of it to get rid of all of it. But the antioxidants are great for a lot of different things. They're great for disease risk, dropping your disease risk. They're great for, we talked about recovery, injury recovery, anti-inflammatory. They're also great for your metabolic health, because there's a lot about like weight and weight loss, and that's connected to the gut microbiome too. It's good for gut inflammation, which can also cause all sorts of problems. It's good for your skin, your eyes, and you can't get away from it. We are getting bombarded by oxidative stress wherever we go. There's chemicals everywhere. Again, we talked about not freaking out. You can't get away from it unless you live in like a hazmat suit in an isolated bubble somewhere, and that's no way to live. So and they will help your body to defend itself. And it's also good for your immune system. Your immune system, especially mushrooms, and most especially functional mushrooms. Lots of correlations coming out there. This has been known like in Eastern societies for thousands of years, but that's just starting to come to the forefront in this, this part of the world. Even just some of the mushrooms that you eat, like oyster mushrooms and shiitakes and even button mushrooms. There's a lot of great stuff for your immune system, all just wrapped up in plant-based. Now, and aside for my fungi nerds, I know mushrooms are fungi. They are not plants, but they do get lumped into the plant-based thing because they are part of the plant-based diet. And a lot of people are doing great things with mushrooms in plant-based foods right now too. I think that's kind of the next wave with algae protein. Keep an eye on mycelium. Lots of stuff going on there.
That's amazing. There are so many benefits. And the thing too, it's, and I want to talk about the rabbit hole just a little bit because, it's okay to be where you are. You don't have to give up everything, because I know, and I've shared this story on my show before, but when I was like trying to eat healthy, because I went down a bad path for a few years and I did not take care of myself in any way, shape, or form. And when I decided that I was going to get back on track, I decided to go from 0 to 100, not even 60, 0 to 100. And I got paralyzed by little things and now I see it's little, but like for example, blueberries. I'm eating things like Twix and Snickers and McDonald's and Taco Bell. And, that's what I mean. This was my diet. Soda, this is what my diet was. And I wouldn't even eat the blueberry because I couldn't at the time afford organic, without even thinking about the fact that it's a regular blueberry that's not organic is still a hell of a lot better than a Snickers bar.
And I think it's Dr. Greger and it's probably a lot of other plant-based doctors who said basically it floats around the plant-based space. The healthiest produce is what you're going to eat.
Yes.
And what you can eat. I mean, I wish I could buy everything from local, organic, regenerative farms. I can't. I mean, I'm a small business owner. We don't have it. Despite what you might have heard, we're not rolling in the dough over here. It's like we have money, we can take care of ourselves. God is good, He provides, but I'm not over here like Scrooge McDuck throwing bills in the air all the time. And I go to the store and I'm like, what produce is on sale?
Exactly.
I buy that, and I have a good veggie wash. And this is actually a pro tip: if you have a farmer's market near you, get to know the farmers and ask them about their compost and their seconds. I have walked out of farmers markets literally with the greens off the tops of things like beets and radishes and stuff that nobody else wants. Farmers are going to take it home and compost it. Yeah. I literally walked it out of the farmers market with like pounds of free greens. I also this year got boxes of seconds stone fruits, the ones that got like bruises or they have like a little nose on them or something. Literally like 10 plus pounds for $15. And I know a guy who just sold me apples for 50 cents a pound because they were utility. Like, I don't understand how they were utility. Only one of them rotted on me, and like the rest of them are just kind of like a little ugly. They're not even like, they don't even have like spots on them. So get to know your farmers. That's a great way to eat more plant-based too, and support your local farmers.
Exactly. And something else too with the farmers market is not everybody can get through the whole organic labeling system. That does not mean that they are not organic. So you can ask.
And a lot of people also will do low spray if they don't do 100% organic. You can just ask people. I mean, just ask them. They'll be happy to tell you how they grow stuff. But don't go up to them and go, "Is this organic?" I don't appreciate that.
I mean, I'm sorry. That was so good. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Okay. Recover. But anyway, I love the idea of that, this new wave. I'm going back to the new wave of food that's, because don't get me wrong, I love me an Impossible Burger. I love it. But I think of that as like almost fast food at this point. So I love the idea of things, that I love becoming even more healthy so I could still get to enjoy them. So I'm so glad that there are new products. And, you mentioned a few different places and things, but what should somebody look for when they're in the grocery store? What kind of things are like going to tell somebody that this is a healthier option as opposed to something else?
Well, I'll start by saying that, as you were mentioning before, if you're going from basically a fast food and soda diet to a plant-based diet, it's this always comes to mind. I did a Clubhouse room at one point with a bunch of people, including Irina Gary from Change Foods, and we were talking about what counts as healthy. And she said something that really stuck with me. She said something along the lines of, your frame of reference is not a kale salad. Your frame of reference is a beef burger.
Exactly.
So what is your frame of reference that you're trying to get healthier than? So if your frame of reference is, say, your standard factory farmed beef burger, Impossible or Beyond, if you want to have the beefy experience while you are moving towards, a trajectory towards a more whole plant-based diet, don't look at it and go, well, this is totally unhealthy, I'm just going to go back to McDonald's. It's like you said with the blueberry thing. It's like, think about it, frame it in whatever reference point you have right now. But if you are ready to go literally beyond that, pun sort of intended, you can look for, I hesitate to say look for things with less ingredients, because sprouted bread can have a gajillion ingredients and it's good for you. Look for things that trend more toward whole ingredients. Read it. If you understand what the majority of the ingredients are, you don't have to understand all of them, because some of these products, they need something like a binder or a stabilizer or an emulsifier in order to stay together when you cook them and eat them, and in order to actually taste decent. So don't worry if there's some stuff that you don't completely understand, but avoid anything that's got like an artificial color in it or an artificial flavor or something that has like numbers attached to it. That's usually a red flag. But basically, if you can read and understand the vast majority of the ingredients that are on the label, it's going to get you in the right direction. One thing I also tell people to watch out for is if you're trying to get off things like really, really salty and really, really sugary foods, get to know all the different names of sugar, because some of those things, you turn the box on the side and it's like, this is a healthy granola bar or a healthy cereal bar or whatever. And literally like the first 7 ingredients, sugar is 5 of them, but it's just in different forms. I am not going to say don't ever eat sugar. I mean, we got the holidays coming up. There's going to be some Christmas cookies floating around. I'm not going to say don't ever eat sugar, but if you're going to be making plant-based your lifestyle, and if you want to be making plant-based healthy your lifestyle, just kind of get familiar with where some of this stuff can be hiding. So pronounceable ingredients, understandable ingredients, know your names of sugar. And I would say one other thing is don't necessarily be afraid of fats and oils. This floats around the plant-based space a lot. I'm not going to say make this the foundation of your diet, but say you want to make like a chicken stir fry and you pick up like something like Daring Foods, or there's a few other ones like corn and that sort of thing. Corn does have some vegan options, or you pick up, anything and you read it and it says, the first 7 ingredients are things you totally understand. And then it says canola oil, olive oil, safflower oil. Don't worry about it. The vast majority of everything else in that pan is going to be a vegetable. So don't worry about it. I mean, if you're sitting there eating the whole bag every day, every meal, then you got some kinds of, you got something to deal with there. But as part of a mostly whole food, relatively healthy plant-based diet, we're finding out things now about, like, I was just talking to somebody about this recently. And it's just like, we're finding out things about some oils that are good. And of course, you need fats of all kinds. My favorites are nuts and seeds and avocados. And if you don't want to eat oil, you don't have to. But if you want a product that's got some in it, don't worry too much about it.
I think that's a really valid point that, a lot of people, they want to, all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, there's oil. I can't. But it still goes back to that frame of reference as well. It's still a healthier choice than what you had before. It's still better for you. And I don't know about you, but I think it is worth mentioning that, I want to enjoy my life. And if I am going to eat that and it has oil in it and I want to enjoy it, I'm going to do that. Why not?
There is a balance there. I mean, you don't always want to be chasing after just what tastes good, because it's going to lead you astray.
Yeah,
especially if
exactly.
you're transitioning, because your taste buds hasn't transitioned yet. So some stuff's I always tell people, be prepared that stuff is not going to taste good for like 2 weeks. It's just not, because your taste buds need to get used to it. But like you said, on the flip side, you mentioned earlier, don't consistently try to force yourself to eat things you hate, because then you won't want to be on a plant-based diet. It won't be the kind of satisfying that food is supposed to be, because there is, there's actually a biblical principle here. There is a mention that God gives us all things richly to enjoy. And also there's a lot in the book of Ecclesiastes about enjoying, the things that you have in life that are good things, and enjoying them in a right way, not in an overly indulgent way. So there's a type of enjoyment I really think that does come with plant-based foods, because they're not the kinds of foods that you're going to sit there and like eat the whole box of Twinkies. You're going to eat it, you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to feel healthy, and you're going to feel satisfied, and you're going to be excited about what you're eating and what you're going to get to eat as the day goes on.
Amazing. We are basically out of time. I just want to make sure that we pop up your LinkedIn, because I know that is one of the best ways to reach you as well.
Yes, indeed. I pretty much live on LinkedIn.
Yes. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It has been an absolute pleasure. I feel like a wealth of knowledge and relaxed, because I was one of those people that was like, and then I didn't want to eat anything. So
honestly, that was me. But like, having been there, I still have my moments when I'm like, and I'm mostly oil-free too, but I'm really considering, what's the balanced view on this? And you gotta be balanced for health, and you gotta be balanced for, we were talking about that mental health. You can't be terrified of everything you're going to eat. You want to be able to have a meal and just eat it, and not be thinking about, are there pesticides in this? How about the macros? And
Exactly. Well, Sam, thank you so much for being on the show today. As I mentioned, it's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you again soon.
Well, thanks again, Julie. It was really enjoyable. Enjoyed chatting with you.
Awesome. And that is all the time that we have for today. I just want to say thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Enjoy your weekend.